Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Red Bull LAN Orlando as we resume the practice matches that take place before our focus player jumps into the booth for the first time. That'll be Liquid Chef. That's happening very, very soon. In fact, maybe you should take a quick look at the schedule, remind everyone of what we got coming up, and then while we do that, we're going to be getting into our next game, MorroW versus SaSe. Good one.
And again, if we do take a look at that schedule, we see we're in the midst of watching some practice games as the players do a little bit of warm-up, continue to stretch those tendons out. And in just 30 short minutes, we're going to be beginning Chef's challenge. He's setting up in the main stage booth right now up against his first round opponent, JYP.
That's going to be a heck of a game to kick off this
challenge.
You know, I mean, not to be redundant, but JYP is actually one of the players that almost plays specifically to what Chef is looking for help for. And so I just think that there's no better way to kind of kick that off. And we'll be seeing Chef as our first focus player here in just a moment. But before we do, this warm-up game between SaSe and MorroW has just begun. And let's introduce the players.
Yeah, right now we have SaSe from Team Quantic requested the map Daybreak. It's kind of like you were saying earlier on that, you know, a lot of these players have been requesting Daybreak as a lot of their practice maps because they can't get it anywhere on the ladder. So SaSe down spawning in the bottom left position up against MorroW in the top right, who we haven't really gotten to see that much of since he's been in Korea.
No, no, we haven't. But he's in very good spirits. He's happy to be here. And people have said, Sean, that MorroW's training in Korea has been going very, very well. And even he himself has said that it is something that, you know, that has benefited him greatly. He is still maintaining pretty much Zerg as status in versus Protoss and versus Terran. But versus Zerg, he is still choosing to stick with Terran at this point, which actually makes him a very valuable training partner to have. As he was working with Chef earlier, they were going over a lot of things, and having that perspective where he can answer from both a Terran and a Zerg player is really, really remarkable.
And this is pretty interesting timing. The pool now coming down, and very, very interesting timing. MorroW making sure that he had a drone there ready to drop down the third. And even though you might think to yourself, this has completely unaffected my build. I know for a fact that I want to be going for 3 base. I can easily just go for the third down there. The one big problem is that it guarantees to an early expanding Protoss that you're not doing anything different. If this hatch were to go down at the natural, you don't know if he's going to be going for a 2 base fast Spire. You don't know if he's going to be going, hell, even for something crazy like really fast roaches and infestors. But now you know.
It gives definitely a lot of freedom, and certainly now is he going to throw down that third hatch rather quickly as we see the wall getting completed here by SaSe, opening up and walling as you'd expect here on Daybreak. Also, I saw a great game versus Rhett earlier with SaSe where Ling run-bys were really, really effective for Rhett. It does not seem that SaSe has really changed much up at all as far as that's concerned. It was just sort of one of those things that I think he kind of shrugged off and said, I should have had my cannon up a little sooner. So there's the block for the hatch, but with the Lings out, it's not even going to matter as that hatchery will go down rather quickly.
Yeah, you know, I really think that both these players have a very unique style. I mean, SaSe, I've seen him on his stream go for a relatively early third, not really going for Stargates at the start, going for around 5 gateways with Blink and Sentry, and then immediately going double Robo for double Immortal, and he'll get 6 chrono-boosted Immortals very quickly. And then suddenly he can push most Zergs who are trying to go for Roach defenses, and they get caught completely with their pants down. MorroW, likewise, has a totally weird style of Ling, Baneling, and Fester that he's been very, very comfortable messing around with. But I think of all foreign Zergs, MorroW is most versatile and comfortable with different styles.
Yeah, I think that you, I think that you bring up a couple of great points there, and specifically SaSe and his chrono-boosted Immortals. I mean, that is throwing so many Zerg players off, especially who are preparing with some sort of Roach defense. This especially coming when we see these early lair builds, and we've been seeing earlier infestation pits, and it's just sort of like, what do you make suddenly? You're focused on droning, you don't have a whole lot of larvae, and roaches are just going to die immediately. So those timings can be really, really nasty, and you know, I'm just excited to see how MorroW is going to handle this 3 base as he set himself up on Daybreak.
And you know, I even want to just stay for a moment and just freak out at how awesome this was. SaSe had 2 in the geyser at the 6-minute mark and had his Nexus very exactly rallied into the assimilator. And likewise, up at this expansion, we see 2 in this assimilator. And I've seen SaSe do this all the time, where he's very careful. Look, 2 in both geysers. Most of the time, this is a mistake and you want to cry.
Right.
But this is actually deliberate. I've seen him do this his entire career, be very specific about those timings.
No, again, it's great, and SaSe has even commented a little bit. We were talking about playing versus the partners here, and we were kind of joking that it's a heck of a lot better than having to play versus AI all the time. And he said, actually, every once in a while I will. And during Warcraft 3, I did a lot. And it's because he would get so meticulous with his build, exactly like we're seeing here. He wants it down to the probe. He wants to know, at this point, I'm rallying this Nexus over here, or putting the proper amount of probes in. And so I believe that really comes from his desire to be that meticulous, even as far back as Warcraft 3.
Now, looking at these games right now, we're seeing that MorroW's doing the very typical, fairly fast layer. We see it getting started around 8 minutes, so that way he can get that roach speed started around 9:15. This is going to allow him to deflect a lot of pushes, but it also commits him to making almost all roaches. That's not really a bad thing, but it is a predictable thing that a lot of players try to exploit. Looks like SaSe is going for a very fast third base. This is increasingly becoming the trend in this matchup. Maybe you open air and go for a fast third. Maybe you just go for a fast third, like what SaSe is doing. Maybe you go blink and then sentries and then go for a fast third. Either way, that third base and passivity is becoming increasingly the norm, but wow, nice snipe there by MorroW. That's going to help so much. No more forward pylon.
Now, I want to ask you a little bit about that third base, because as a response from the Zerg, we've seen, a lot of then pressure to that third, because it becomes very, very difficult in this Immortal.
Yeah.
A little scary over there, does not want to get surrounded by those things. Here come the Stalkers to help out.
Nice bait.
In terms of, even from the back, SaSe with a nice flank there. You don't see that very often with sentries.
What's the best counter to Zerg? We'll simply surround him with your Protoss units.
But the third base, talk to me about this, because the Zerg identifies it. A lot of times they might be in a position where they can just make a ton of units. We see Stefano specifically abuse that particular style. So what do you think is important in order to protect that third? Is it like what we're seeing now, where SaSe moves out and applies a little bit of pressure, or...
Weirdly, this can actually make your third a little more vulnerable. You have to be so ultra careful in a specific spot like this. You have to do a lot of damage and have to catch the Zerg quite well off guard. And it looks like MorroW loses a queen, and this is pretty much all you want to do as SaSe. He really should pull back at this point in time. Right now, MorroW's going to be overbuilding units to defend against this inevitable push, and then he's going to use those units. He's going to use those units to try to do a nice counterattack, a nice sweep around. Very nice job by MorroW. If he can manage to take out this force, that would be huge, but look at SaSe with the incredible force fields.
Yeah, he really puts them down. In fact, he even saves that second Immortal, which is going to be a big one. He actually traps even more roaches on the other side, and really that army only got damage from the Lings. The roaches did very, very little overall. Now, I'd love to see the energy on the sentries, but also note that the Nidus Worm is coming out, and that could play big there. We've got a Warp Prism up there to power, so no forward pylon, and I mean, he's just going to continue to put on this pressure.
Now, let's talk about your question about the early third base from SaSe. Obviously, this helps him get more and more resources, but it also makes him vulnerable to counterattacks from above, hits at the front, and it looks like MorroW is extending this, saying, you know what, you're going to be even more vulnerable if I'm hitting from 3 places at once, and the Nidus Worm has popped out. A couple of Hydras immediately eject themselves and start doing some massive damage, extremely unusual style, and now MorroW is able to rip apart those probes, and it looks like Zealous is the warp-in choice from SaSe. They might clean it up, but the Hydras just do so much damage.
They do, but here comes another Nidus Worm. And that first one, although I can't really call it a distraction because he sent a lot of units through, he did end up killing some probes. But here we see SaSe doing some, almost going up there. He's going to hear the noises. He's going to check. He needs to get those units out as quickly as he possible. If he shoots down the Nidus Worm, nothing else will come out, but he actually just force fields and lets the entire army spill out of the Nidus, but coming from the back.
What brilliant play by MorroW. I mean, essentially he's taking the traditional style of Zerg, of building units for defense and then trying to push, and now hitting from so many sides, and SaSe, who tries to deflect it at the top, getting completely surrounded. The Roachling army just cleans it up. I mean,
amazing.
It's brilliant what MorroW's doing right now. The Nidus Worm completely sidesteps this. Look, SaSe's abandoned base 3.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to. Upon knowing that he's going to lose that battle pretty significantly, he goes ahead and pulls it back, and I love it. The reinforcing Nidus Worm, we need to see more of this. He's putting them all around the map to actually allow himself just that extra mobility.
Whoa! How embarrassing. It looks like there was a drop at that top, guys.
While that was going on, but the third goes down, so a trade. Now, that was Lair, though. Is he reconstructing? It does look like he's just started it, possibly the natural, likely the natural.
Wow, SaSe had the incredible focus to be able to do this drop. I mean, it looks like one thing I'll be training at the Red Bull LAN is watching the mini-map on this monitor, DJ Wheat.
Just make sure. But look at this force from MorroW. Not only does he have the Nidus Worms connecting and just allowing him to reinforce from any point, but he is, I mean, he's got so many units here to be able to inflict as much damage as possible. Looks like he's just going to go after those forward cannons, doing a lot of hits, and also take down that forge. The Lings very badly want to get into this battle.
And look at this, only 6 roaches, almost all Hydra Ling coming out from MorroW. Very, very slow force, but with all the Nidus Worms he has, he can easily retreat those slow Hydras. But SaSe, with those crisp, well-planted force fields, now going for the double Colossus tech, and it looks like the Cybernetics core does fall. MorroW starting to sweep in. Very, very nice play by him right now.
A few force fields to cut off the rest of the army, but at this point, not rebuilding a Cybernetics core. And he did throw down during that battle an additional Robo, getting now a second Colossus. And here we have a Warp Prism Immortal drop and some Zealots at the 30. He's got to save those Immortals, and we'll pick up
and he gets it off.
Wow.
What weird harassment from SaSe. You know, SaSe is the sort of player who always plays wildly different from other Protosses. He was one of the pioneers of this kind of Warp Prism use, invented sentry drops and popularized their efficiency, and now forcing these drops to work. The Immortal Zealot, the Zerglings, the only fast part of this army. The Zergling's the only fast part of this army. He just warps and Zealots, no problem. Look, a Nidus defensively being planted down. These players are on a whole nother level.
It's really good, and again, even though it's a pretty heavy gas investment, having the mobility to instantly return all those units that were attacking at the third or anything that was left over back is really great. And I cannot believe it, but he saves the hatchery. We do not see the Warp Prism go down. That thing only had 10 hit points to start. But it is in a lot of trouble right now, Sean.
That takes discipline. I'm not going to lie. I would kill the hatch and lose both Immortals and the Warp Prism every time. Every time I'd be like, come on, it feels terrible. I seriously would just box every unit I have and just right-click on this hatch and cross my fingers.
I will take it down.
That stinks. But look at this MorroW with the offensive creep tumoring. I mean, MorroW has literally taken standard weak Zerg versus Protoss play, Roach, Ling, Hydra, the layer-focused tech, and turn it into a powerhouse just by introducing more Nidus Worms.
I mean, and this is not something, and we've seen Nidus Worms used in somewhat of a gimmicky sort of way. We have seen some, and look at that, Warp Prism trying to poke back in there, but there is coverage on both sides. We're going to try to get another hatchery there. But I don't know that we've seen Nidus Worms completely used to their full potential. In this particular case, using it for mobility, trying to force that creep spread into the third of the Protoss's base, that is all great. The question is will it achieve him victory? Now, we have some mutas coming out. Of course, means the Spire's already done and definitely going to get some Corruptors. But honestly, SaSe's ground army is nothing too spectacular at this moment.
Oh, no. In that unit tab, he has only 8 Stalkers. But SaSe is demonstrating how potent of a player he is. I mean, he was essentially down and out. And in StarCraft 2, time and again has proven it's the sort of game that's very difficult to make comebacks in. But that's exactly what we see SaSe doing. These very nice Warp Prism drops, peeling the Protoss player apart from all possible angles. And there's the Warp Prism coming in the backside. And at the same time, it looks like Nidus Worm at the natural and Ling Muta hitting the third. These players are insane.
All over the place, but a lot of drones will go down on that attack on the fourth. And remember, one of those bases is just now going up. I believe that's the third base. The Hydras are just ripping apart the natural of SaSe, but he is going to be in a position where he can counterattack with this force.
And there's the hatch. Will be falling right as it pops up. MorroW now taking down the Nexus. And it looks like a base trade is about to commence, and Blink somehow managing to cut off all of these reinforcing units. I mean, This has been one of the most insane games
it has. Now,
I've seen in quite some time.
The probes moved down to MorroW's 4th, I think, to try to make a base. But the creep is still there, so he's actually not going to be in a position to be able to do that. However, I mean, how is this going to turn out? I feel like at this point, SaSe has really, really pumped up his army. I mean, I think that he's going to win this base trade situation.
Well, he has 19 Stalkers versus a very nice anti-Stalker army. The only problem is that there are 5 Colossi on the field right now. SaSe really just needs a base, and it looks like he found a hidden expansion.
Yeah, long-distance mining. Those probes are going to have to get the work done, but it's more important to just make sure that he's got an insurance policy in this base trade situation. If the house goes down, it's okay. He's got this Nexus. It will not reveal him as well, and it's something that he's got to consider.
I mean, I was talking to MorroW about a week ago, and he was saying that he really thinks that the Zerg vs. Protoss matchup has been missing Nidus Worms. That, Ling Muta's pretty cool, but Roach Ling Hydra should be better than it's been performing. And he said that he thinks the Nidus Worm is the big key to that. And it looks like he demonstrated today the amount of damage it can do. But SaSe somehow figuring out the way to deflect it and is created basically a perfect base trade situation with a slightly larger army.
I'm looking, though, and seeing all the hatcheries go down. I mean, I don't feel like SaSe can break up his army. In fact, we see a battle occurring right in the middle as it looks like the Lings are going all over. Oh, and the Muta's coming in as well. If he eliminates these Stalkers, it's going to be very, very hard because SaSe has to keep that Nexus alive. Here come the Colossus to try to help out, and it looks like MorroW will move back. The question is MorroW be able to extend himself to the other hatcheries?
Whoops.
Oh, poor Immortal.
He was trying to do his Immortal impersonation, but then he died.
Yeah,
that's right. We hired a team of writers to write that joke just for the Red Bull LAN. I hope you enjoyed that. Again, if you think that's funny, feel free to tweet me with the hashtag RBL or RBLAN. Ooh, 2 more Immortals managing to fall, but it looks like SaSe realizes that the Immortals are not actually the useful unit in this situation, as there are no more roaches on the map.
I mean, I really feel for SaSe here. If he moves forward at an inopportune time and that Nexus is discovered, I mean,
this could just be lights out unless he has some sort of hidden building somewhere.
He thinks that's maybe the only hatch. I don't know.
Oh, there's the pylon moving through. Now it's literally a forced base trade or forced base race. He has to try to plant his pylons in good enough locations. He's slowly killing off all these Nidus Worms, but there's a good amount of Hydralisks here. But it looks like MorroW utilizing these Nidus networks to try to just bounce around the map.
Wow, and MorroW just continues to throw down hatchery after hatchery. I think that's the smartest thing that he can do in this situation. He's not really reinforcing at this point. And here we are. Oh, drones even being saved by the Nidus Worm. Seriously, I do not believe I have really seen Nidus used in such a way in ZVP.
Yeah, I mean, this Nidus network is just showing so many possibilities right now. I mean, it's the sort of thing that makes me want to just stop commentating and go play right now. I mean, the amount of damage that it's doing, the fact that he can continuously retreat, and now all of a sudden, ordinarily SaSe would have just had to kill this base and it would have been a done deal. But now he has to travel all the way down to this hatchery, and if MorroW just mines up another 300, takes the bottom right again, SaSe has nothing that he can really do. He's actually going to have to try to win by getting lucky with this Warp Prism.
Yeah, this is going to be a very, very interesting end to this game. Of course, the Mutas and a few Lings are just kind of continuing to scout, and he's being very diligent about that. But here come Immortals to be dropped down, and he's going to immediately try to go after that Nidus. Is that going to... is that the right choice? I'm not really sure what his plan is at this point in time.
I mean, I think that SaSe realizes that he really must take out these Nidus networks. There's no way that he can keep up in the base trade racing. MorroW's going to just continuously keep running and running and running. But the real question is, can he keep an eye on these Mutalisks? Overall, the ground army from SaSe is stronger, but MorroW is in a better tactical position purely thanks to the Nidus networks that he built up at the start of the game. Now all he has to do is build a spawning pool so he can build any units.
So the Stalkers, you could tell that SaSe is being a little bit hesitant about leaving the safety of that assimilator. In fact, right now we do see that the Lings and the Mutas are actually quite close to that position. And even though he moved his stalkers out, kind of like, I'm going to go attack that base, he knows that inevitable threat of those Mutalisks can come in and finish the game. If those stalkers are not there, last time I checked, Colossus just die to Mutalisks, and there will be absolutely zero help there. So it looks like the Warp Prism's going to go back up, and this Warp Prism's been SaSe's saving grace in all of this.
Ooh.
More units dying too, Sean, and that means that finally...
No, great snipe there by MorroW, exploiting the fastness of those units. Now trying to step in and see if he can do some key damage here to this expansion. It looks like he will take out the Queen. Can he get the Nidus network? It looks like he's going to run right into the Mutalisks, and he realizes the situation he's in. He's going to pull back. He's going to try to target fire the Roaches, but look at that great control by MorroW. And here comes SaSe. He knows exactly where all the units are, and he's going to try to force the engagement.
Now the question is, well, he knows exactly where that assimilator is. Is he just going to go beeline over to it? There's absolutely no units protecting that assimilator, and it looks like SaSe, instead of actually going for the building, says, well, if I kill your units, then there's nothing that you can use to kill it, and he's going after the assimilator right now, whether or not SaSe believes it. Oh my gosh, he knows it's over. And GG.
Wow.
It's kind of crazy.
That was a practice game, Marcus.
I know, and quite an amazing one at that.
And it's so funny because ordinarily, I mean, even when I think of practice games, I think of like the straight and narrow path of the build I want to do, and I try to perfect it and work it inward. So that way, if there's, whoops, this strategy creates crazy games, trying to like smooth that out. But in that game, that was really MorroW practicing that sort of crazy game, demonstrating, thank you, Nidus Worm.
Yeah, the Nidus Worm, I mean, first it was used as an offensive method of use. Then he used it defensively to pull the units back and to retreat when he needed to. Then he used it to bring the Queen out and spread the creep, which is, a necessity. But then even using it to save all of his drones. I mean, there was four very specific uses of the Nidus Worm. And a lot of times we just see the Nidus Worm used, okay, I'm going to try offensively using it. And then it gets shut down, and that's it. And I think the key to it was, remember, the first Nidus Worm in the base was almost a gimme. Right? The Overlord did not see that the pylon was there, and so it was like, okay. But that's when the Nidus Worm in the Northwest opened, and that, of course, is going to allow him access to that third.
In about 2 minutes, I actually want to take a step back into this game to kind of talk about that. Because before we do that, I want to contrast it with the way that we've been hearing about how Chef wants to prepare things versus the way that MorroW wants to try to prepare and defend things. So MorroW, for instance, is going for this 3-base style where he ends up taking these extra expansions. Now, to note, here's the problem Zergs are having, Marcus. How do I deal with that huge, scary 17-ish minute push that Protosses are making? The struggle that Zergs have been having is that's right before they get Broodlords. They've just maxed out on Hydra Roach. Protoss is just maxed out. So how do you make Hydra Roach useful? Stefano's answer is, I'm going to skip over it, go Infester, and go straight for Broodlord. But MorroW's answer is, I'm going to get the Nidus network. And that is what's going to allow me to step back and do so much damage in this mid-game. It's this period right here, right at 10 minutes. In that production, we see that, we have a pretty good drone count as MorroW, but we don't quite have enough drones to build a whole bunch of units and expand and tech. We can really only do some of them. So here we see the expansions coming up. And I mean, I think, Marcus, this is the situation we've seen more times than any where a Zerg player gets stuck building just Roaches and Hydras.
Right. And I mean, that battle did not go very well for MorroW at all.
Absolutely not.
Because of the force fields from SaSe. And also snagging the Queen. Forgot about that as well. So he's going to lose a lot of his initial army. Which, and if I get ahead of myself, please stop. But I want to talk a little bit about the gas usage with the Nidus and how then having to balance that. Does he have all 6 gases up then?
It looks like, yeah. I mean, that's a brilliant observation. Holy cow, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where you always have to measure how much gas and minerals you're spending, and ordinarily a Zerg player will have 4 or 5 geysers and ignore this 6th one for a little while until he gets Infestors. Because basically the Zerg says, I really only need minerals to make Roaches, Lings, and Hydras, so let me focus on that. But MorroW's saying, well, if I have this geyser, I may as well get it. And what can I use it for? Boom, Nidus network. Easy way. I mean, it's almost like saying one geyser is just devoted to Nidus network gas and everything else is fine. It's at a moment like this that, you also realize few more drones, MorroW's trying to sneak in. And still, Zergs always feel pressured because when this moment happens, which is very common in any game, suddenly, oh, yep, never mind, not going to drone anymore. That was not a good idea. Yep, I have a good drone count. I just got a whole bunch more larvae. Better make a whole bunch of units. But look at this play, Marcus. This Nidus network here completely catching SaSe off guard.
Yeah, and I mean, he didn't really scout to see if there was going to be the pylon there to snag it, but he got those units out. A lot of probes died right away, and that set up, of course, the Nidus for the third.
Yeah, and I mean, even a Nidus up here, it seems like such an arbitrary location to put it. I mean, most people pretty much just plant it here or try to plant it behind there, but this is probably one of the most vulnerable places for Protoss on the entire map, because Protoss is going to be positioning himself here. He's going to be positioning himself here by this watchtower, thinking, I have all Zerg movement covered. You can't cover Zerg movement if he has Nidus worms tunneling holes through outer space.
Yeah, and Sean, if he doesn't, if he actually doesn't kill the Nidus worm, then the creep blocks the fourth too. So, I mean, you force the Protoss to do something about it.
And you know, I think the biggest exciting factor through all of this was the fact that SaSe was still counterattacking. He was still doing these sorts of counterattack drops. Sure, he had this push going on up here, and we talked a lot about the Nidus network that helped throughout the game. But the instant SaSe realized that this push was suddenly in the mood to retreat, this Warp Prism just went back and snagged these two. Here he is trying to clear himself off, go into defensive mode, still having to focus enough to do this drop, warp in a bunch of Zealots. And what could you do as MorroW? Well, you could either commit to this attack at the front, or you could go back and defend. MorroW tried to go back and defend. Because he had that Nidus network, he was able to do both a lot more easily. Almost every Zerg would have just basically lost right then and there. But look, there's the defense, and immediately reinforces with that offense. I honestly think that that is a really cool play. And of course, as we talked about throughout the game, Nidus network, easy counterattack peasy.
Yeah, I mean, the timing of it, the usage of it was really, really impressive. And, you know, quite frankly, especially as a Zerg player, I'd love to see more of it. I know that it kind of really goes against the current metagame of playing Zerg, but that doesn't mean that you can't use it and it cannot be effective. And that was just a great demonstration of that.
Now, we've got the chance to watch just 2 warm-up matches where we saw Parting, Puma, SaSe, and MorroW play some games. And now it's time for Chef's Challenge. We are actually going to get the chance to talk about Chef, to look at him in depth. I mean,
it's going to be great, and we know what he's going to be focusing on. We're going to have the opportunity to talk a little bit more with him before his challenge begins. Because when you say challenge, you are not kidding, Sean. JYP is his first Protoss opponent to try to, you know, help himself and to train better against this particular method of opening from a Protoss. This should be really good.
We're going to be introing the challenge that Chef will be doing right after this short break. So if any of you have ever wondered to yourself, how do the pros train? What are the steps that they take? What are the situations they put themselves in? We're going to be finding out right after this.